Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another session of OPP Uniform Recruitment Ask Me Anything Tuesdays. My name is Constable Real Levac. I am one of the recruiters in Eastern Region, and I'm joined today by Acting Sergeant Marisol Primo, who is also in East Region with a little assignment out in West Region. Welcome to the wonderful world of virtual life as we know it. Hi, Marisol.
Exactly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
So just a little bit of information while everybody kind of gets settled in. Please send in some questions. We'll answer them best we can as we go through this session. Si vous avez des questions en français aujourd'hui, n'hésitez pas de les envoyer. Je peux vous répondre durant la session aujourd'hui. Some of you may be aware that we recently launched a new application platform / format. The emailed application that we used to have is no longer the process. We have a application portal, which you can find on our website, opp.ca/careers, and where you see apply now, you can go in, you register yourself through the system, and from there you can fill out our application process. Just prior to that, there is beside the application a little marker that you can click. There's find out more, where you can get a lot more information about the application process, different documents that you may require, fitness requirements, medical requirements, frequently asked questions. All that is on our website to prepare you to put in a good competitive application. Marisol, you want to touch on that release tonight?
Yeah, so tonight, if you're following us on social media, tune into our YouTube channel around 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight, and you'll learn about OPB Northbound Edition road trip. This week, we are visiting Wawa. And so it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit about the North and maybe about some of our Northern duration postings. And I'm sure that the scenery will be spectacular, as it always is. If you've seen any of that on our social media, you'll see, the Northern Lights and all the things that we highlight in some of our Northern duration images are pretty amazing. So check that out on YouTube.
All right. So a couple of application questions here. I'm going to kind of touch on both of them. So the application process itself, the information required has not changed. Just the element of how you apply has changed. So we still need a cover letter with your application and not only your resume. We still require a cover letter. And for fitness logs, it's a minimum of 2 weeks of fitness logs. There's no maximums. I think the most I've seen is about 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks. The thing is that the application requires you to continue your fitness logs throughout the whole hiring process. So we need at least 2 weeks to give us an idea of where you fit in your fitness. And then you would continue through that so we can see how that pattern continues and develops throughout the process as well. So there's no maximum. However, I don't think you need to put a year's worth of fitness logs in there. It's minimum 2 weeks. If you want to put in a couple extra weeks, that's okay. But we're going to follow you throughout the process as well, not just what you hand in before. So it's not a matter of handing in 10 weeks and then not doing anything throughout the process. That's not how it's going to work. So that information that we're looking for is still the same in the process.
Just a few kind of short ones here, so I'll answer a few. So someone was asking, when it comes to your 6 preferred postings, for example, could you choose all 6 detachment preferences as HSD? And so, yes, you can choose the 6 that best suit you, your needs, the needs of your family. So if all of those happen to be clustered in one area, then that is fine. Someone else is just asking regarding requirements. Do we accept 44-year-old candidates? And yes, we do. So the minimum requirement is that you need to be 18 years of age, but there is no maximum or cutoff age. So certainly a 44-year-old candidate could apply.
Yeah. And also for application, can somebody with dyslexia apply? Yes, they can apply at any time if there's any type of testing or anything like that, particularly if you get through the process, get to OPC. Let us know that, because if there's any accommodations that can be made, we can make some of those accommodations. So it doesn't necessarily take you out of the process because of that. The other thing,
Someone, oh,
Sorry, I was
go
just going
ahead.
to hit on another quick one here. Somebody's asking if we're sending people back if they don't pass 75% on the PIN in the first week of training. No, the PIN test is an expectation. We expect candidates to submit a weekly PIN test in their fitness logs. We expect them to be able to complete the PIN test in training. However, if you don't reach 75%, we do not send you home. The fitness requirements where you must pass is the shuttle run at the beginning of our process, in the late stages of our process, and at the Ontario Police College, you must pass the shuttle run, all at level 7 minimum, and also the prep test, which is the obstacle course portion, which you can find if you look on YouTube and put like police prep fitness. I saw one at some point. There was a GoPro, somebody running through the prep with the GoPro, and we do have explanations and descriptors of those two elements on our website as well. So those are the requirements and expectations.
And someone here is asking, at the end of an interview as a recruiter, what do we feel makes a candidate the right fit for a job? And so there are a lot of things as a recruiter that we take into account. So after or during an interview, of course, we are assessing your communication skills, so your ability to articulate yourself. But really, what stands out for us are the areas of assessment. And so you can find those areas of assessment on our website, also social media. Those 10 areas of assessment are really what we're looking at in terms of assessing a candidate and determining how well-rounded you are and where you really shine through in different areas. So really what you want to do is look at those areas of assessment and determine for yourself whether you have some room for improvement in certain areas or whether you feel like you really have achieved your highest level in all of those areas.
I have a couple quick ones here. Somebody's asking when you get to the background stage, if the background investigator will contact you and let you know that the investigation is being started prior to contacting references. And yes, they will let you know. So you can give your references a heads up that that is coming in the near future. Sometimes people don't tell their employers right away as well, in fear that they might not get any advancements if they know they're in a process elsewhere, not knowing if they're going to pass the interview or not. So yes, they will contact you. And at that point, you can let your references know that the background investigator is going to reach out for that portion of the process. No, if you apply to the auxiliary program, you do not have to stay for 2 years. That used to be in place. However, we have a bit of a system going on where if you apply to the auxiliary program and we feel you might be competitive for a constable position, you may get asked if you're interested and want to jump into that stream as well. You're not forced to do that by any means, but you're not required to stay for the 2 years. And if that's so, you may just they will put your auxiliary application on hold while you run through the constable process. And then depending what happens there, if you're not successful, you can jump back to the auxiliary. Because depending why you're not successful doesn't necessarily mean that you can't apply to the auxiliary after that. Sometimes it might just be a matter of development, which you can get through the auxiliary program, which is kind of designed for that as well. So no minimum time, but we kind of join the streams together to see what can best fit yourselves and the organization in the different programs.
Just a few short follow-up questions regarding fitness here by the looks of it. So someone was inquiring after they've sent in their shuttle run video, how long maybe that they might wait to hear back. And so it's really hard to predict. You could find yourself waiting for a few weeks. Sometimes it's quicker. So don't panic if it's been 2 or 3 weeks and you haven't heard anything back. There was another question regarding OACP certificates and whether that's required. It is not a requirement. If you have one, then certainly include it with your application and we will look at that. But you don't have to go out and get it. And after submitting your application, do you submit fitness logs every 2 weeks thereafter? You won't submit them every 2 weeks immediately after submitting your application. Hold on to them. And generally, once you get to the interview stage, you'll get more instructions in terms of how often to submit your fitness logs. But certainly, once you have applied, keep completing weekly fitness logs and hold on to those.
Okay. So somebody's asking about salary expectations. They're coming from a managerial type position from there to come over to the OPP should they be successful. So the starting salary is about 58,000 a year. And then there's different increments at the end of training. And in the next 3 years, 3.5 years, there's different increments from there as you're successful through your probation and your different fourth class, third, second, up to first class constable. So it's not one salary. You might take a drop in salary depending where you're coming from. Some candidates do that. They expect that, knowing that at some point they might catch up or exceed where they're coming from. But just to give you an idea, it's in and around that high 50s at this point to start off with different increments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to add to that. So when you start your training, you're paid in I think it's the $58,000 range. Then once you become a probationary constable, so when you show up at your detachment for the first day, it's somewhere in the high 70,000 range. And then as a first class constable after 3 years, you're making a little over 102,000. And that does not include any overtime, certainly, or paid duties that you might decide to work as well.
Okay. So somebody's asking if they own a cannabis store, if that's going to be a problem in the hiring process. So I'm going to kind of put that into secondary employment. So if you're hired on as a police officer with the OPP, and if you have a business, you have to put in for secondary employment, or if this comes during your career, you have to make application for secondary employment. And this will verify if it's something that would interfere in your work or a conflict of interest in your work, and that be assessed by the OPP at that point. I don't make those decisions, so I'm not going to give you an answer specifically yes or no about a cannabis store. I won't go there. It's a case by case decided by management. However, any type of other employment has to be support accepted by the OPP as secondary employment.
Question regarding volunteering, which is one of our areas of assessment, and we do encourage volunteerism and look at that in our candidates. So we recognize, of course, that most people who apply, you've got a lot going on, whether it be working and raising a family or going to school and working. So we don't expect that you treat your volunteer time like a full-time job, but certainly what we like to see is some consistency and looking at maybe a couple hours a week, or a couple hours a month at least. But we like to see that consistency, maybe dedicated to one organization or one type of volunteerism versus just doing one event here or there throughout the year. Because these can really add to your competitiveness in other areas of assessment. So depending what kind of volunteer work you do, you might develop some great leadership skills. Maybe if you're coaching or mentoring someone, depending on what kind of volunteering you're doing, you might develop some communication skills. For example, if you're volunteering for a crisis line, something like that. So really look at it as an opportunity to develop yourself, but it doesn't have to be a lot of hours. It's just nice to see some consistency in your hours.
So I'm going to go in a couple different directions in this question here. So they're asking, how about administrative opportunities? And will paralegal and law students considered, or only police foundation? So for administrative roles, civilian roles within the OPP, that's not what this format here is for today. This is strictly for uniform recruitment for people that want to be police officers. This is the advice that we're giving here. For civilian opportunities, you can apply to Ontario Go Jobs, or you can not necessarily apply, go look at Ontario Go Jobs. That's where they're going to list civilian positions throughout the Ontario government. Some of those may be within the OPP. to jump back a little bit about your paralegal and law students considered or only police foundations. So, from an educational standpoint, no, you do not have to have a police related educational background. So, you don't have to have police foundations or criminology or that kind of thing. It's an asset to your application because it's related information, related knowledge, related experience that you gain to be able to make yourself competitive throughout the process. But we also look, the general term that we use is the ability to learn. Are you somebody that can take information, learn it, use it? Maybe you can teach as well. Are you generally teachable? Or is it somebody that's constantly requiring supervision? Or can you take some information and take that task on and complete it on your own with that balance of working independently? But sometimes we do ask for some help or some assistance, which is reasonable, versus that constant supervision. So it's a general ability to learn. So not necessarily strictly police related education. We do ask that you submit any transcripts for high school, any post-secondary education, because the Ontario Police College requires a pass of 75% per class. It's not a general average of 75%, it's minimum 75% per class. So we like to see that you have that ability, and we look at that through your transcripts, through speaking to your learning development references. So it may not strictly be teachers or professors, it could be people that supervise you, people that have mentored you, instructed you, maybe in your volunteer work or other domains in your life. So that's a general kind of educational component that we have to make yourself competitive through our process.
There are some questions related to, I guess, details, whether it be related to volunteering or even employment, where maybe it was a long time ago when you did this, or you were employed for a very short period of time, and so how much attention to detail or accuracy needs to be included. And really, you'll notice, particularly with employment, we want a lot of accuracy and attention to detail there. So even if you held a job for a short period of time, or maybe you were employed through a temp agency, you still need to provide those details to us. So, and Constable Levac, maybe you'll have some tips here as well. But sometimes people are able to find more employment information about themselves through the Canada Revenue Agency portal. When you've submitted your taxes, you might be able to get some of that information through the Canada Revenue Agency. Constable Levac, do you have any other suggestions in terms of how people can obtain old employment records?
No, so that's one. I've heard candidates do that before. The other thing, and this is a little bit shooting a little bit further, but if you work for, let's say, a bigger type of company, so let's say you work for McDonald's and your local McDonald's doesn't remember you, you can try reaching out for head office, see if there's any type of human resources there that might have some information of your employment at that point. But yes, try to fill out as much information as you can. One thing that came up recently that hits that is that they work for whatever entity, but now that business is closed. You can put in the name of the business where it says where you're that employer, but just put in brackets business closed. So we know. So in other words, don't leave it out and put it in there, but you can just put in brackets that the business is closed. Put as much information as you can so that the background investigator doesn't have to reach out to you to get all this information. They have it and they can go with it. So yeah, CRA, human resources is probably the two best places to start from to get that as best you can. And so somebody's asking, can refugees apply? Are they eligible? Yes, but any applicant has to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. So if you fit that category, then yes, you can apply to be a constable. And that's for the province of Ontario, OPP, and other municipal forces as well, or services.
There was a question from someone who's already in the process. And so regarding the new online portal, do they need to re-register or do anything? And at this stage, no. I would say you already have a file number assigned to you, and we're taking care of all of that behind the scenes. So just continue, sending any updates that you have as you've been instructed, whether that be to OPP hire, and they will be adding that to your current file, but there's no need to reapply or take any steps like that.
Okay. So I'm going to hit to, somebody's asking to compare academic training compared to your typical Police Foundations program at college. So OPC is a comparable post-secondary kind of education from there. There's hands-on portions, and then there's theoretical portions as well. So it's a balance between those two elements, and you have to pass both the certain theoretical things. There's exams, there's midterms, there's exams, and then there's other hands-on things as well. So I didn't take Police Foundations. I can't say exactly what the comparison from there, but it's equivalent to a post-secondary education, both on those two elements I described. And how many interviews do we have to pass? There is the actual LFI interview. So that's the local focus interview that we do. That's your job interview. It's where we look at a lot of different things about you. I had an old colleague that said the smartest person in the room during the interview was the candidate, because their questions are all about you, the candidate. So in other words, know yourself, know your portfolio, know your application, anything that you've been involved in that you might want to bring as an incident or something that's happened that you might use as an example. Know all that information. Don't be searching for it at interview. You should be prepared to answer any questions. There are also 3 competency-based questions that will be asked at that time through that local focus interview. Also for interviews, there's also psychological interview in the background portion as well. That's part of the psychological testing as well. So there's those 2 interviews there. But the actual job interview is your local focus interview that you'll see one of the recruiters do with you.
Question here from someone who has multiple post-secondary academics, so master's degree, undergrad, college, that sort of thing. And yes, we do want to see transcripts from everything. Keep in mind, this is our way of getting to know you. And so we want to see all of that, even if there are programs that you were enrolled in that you did not complete for whatever reason. We still want those transcripts and want to know about those. So you'll hear us say this all the time, but attention to detail is critical when it comes to your application. And then everything after that, we want as much information as possible. So certainly when it comes to transcripts, when it comes to employment history, all of that, we want as much accuracy and attention to detail as possible. And it makes the process move much more quickly if you have that information ready and provide it to us in a timely manner.
Okay. So somebody's asking if let's say they receive a level 13 on the shuttle run, are they in higher standing than somebody who achieves just level 7 or for just a strict pass or fail? So there is a cutoff pass at level 7. Anything you do in any of the areas of assessment that brings you higher than the minimum elevates your competitiveness against other candidates. You're competing against many other candidates for these positions that we have to offer at the time your application is ongoing. So anything that you can do. So in other words, in education, if you, like I said, it doesn't have to be police related. If it is, it's an enhancement to your file. It opens up different experiences. So it might elevate your competitiveness as well. So all different categories, the more prepared you are, the more competitive you are. Yes, that makes you more adapt to be able to succeed through the process and make yourself stand out against other candidates is what I'm saying. So strictly going, do you still pass the fitness test or do you pass with any other element? No, you pass the fitness test, whether you're 7 or 13. But what it shows is that elevated motivation and dedication to the process and higher competitiveness compared to other candidates. So if ever at the end of the day, if we had to pick different candidates, we're going to look for the most competitive candidates that we have to pick from. And that's part of that process. And that's any process in any job offer. You're an employer or a possible employer is going to pick the most competitive candidate. So make sure that you stand out as best you can in any and all the areas of assessment.
In terms of, there's a question about international applicants who are already police officers. So as we, in our terminology, we say experienced police officers who are international. And so one of the minimum requirements to apply is that you have to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident before you can apply. So that's kind of one of the first, I guess, hurdles that you have to overcome. But when it comes to police officers from other countries, my understanding is that you would have to go through the whole process again as a new recruit police officer, because our training is potentially very different from that which you went through in another country.
So somebody's asking about if they're already in the process, do they have to sign into the new portal to submit like future fitness logs? No, if you have applied through the older format via email, just continue the process as you are. Do not redo a second employment application through the new process. We're dealing with that on our end with that crossover with older applications and the newer format. So don't go out there and submit a second application by any means. You just send in your fitness logs as required through OPP Hire. Somebody had a question for that earlier. I don't think you answered it, Marisol, about fitness logs. Once you submit your application, I think the question was, do you submit it every 2 weeks? And no, you would submit your initial applications with your initial fitness logs with your application. And then you hang on to them. You keep doing them and hang on to them. If you're invited to an interview, then you'll provide them to the recruiter that's going to do your interview. And then after that, they get sent in once a month to OPP Hire. So that'll answer that one. I had forgotten about that one earlier.
Sure. And question regarding, how long you need to serve as a frontline officer working the road before you might apply to a specialty unit or some kind of specialty. And so really, as a new police officer, there is a huge learning curve. So generally, you're looking at about 5 years before you might apply to a specialty unit. And even then, that process is very competitive. There may be a lot of people applying to that specialty unit. So certainly the more experience you have in that area, the more competitive you will be. And really that only comes with more years working the front line and kind of absorbing all of that. But what you learn in theory in classroom, and then when you show up as a police officer and start actually applying that on the road, it's very challenging. And so there's a lot to learn.
Okay. Couple here regarding volunteer. Somebody saying it's been about 10 years. They don't remember exactly when they started. They knew it was summer. Yeah, you can put a general July 2012, 2013, or summer 2012, 2013. If your organization doesn't have records of when exactly you started, then you can put that an approximate time frame. It's not going to take you out of the process at any means if you're off by a month or just a year when it's 10 years worth of volunteering with an organization. So to the best of your knowledge, try to get that information or put in the best you can from there. Offender transportation. So we have a civilian positions in uniform, and I say civilian, but it is a special constable position. And we don't do the hiring for that. It's done through a different stream. So yes, there are positions, whether there's openings or not, I don't know. That's one of the questions here. We don't deal with that hiring process. We deal with uniform recruitment for constable positions. But somebody else is asking about wondering how the process goes after the background investigation. I'm not sure. Just reach out to your background investigator and they should be able to tell you as best they can on how the process is going to proceed from where you're at there. The processes are not necessarily the same from the uniform recruitment stream. So talk to your background investigator and they'll be able to help you out from there.
question about training and how long that is, what that looks like. So if you're successful in our process and you're given an offer of employment which you accept, then once you head off to training, the way that looks is the first week of training is with the OPP at the OPP Academy in Aurelia, and that first week is really just all of the new OPP recruits. You get your equipment. There's some fitness testing and training, of just kind of a general orientation for that week. Then from there, you'll go for 13 weeks to the Ontario Police College in Aylmer, Ontario, which is close to London. And that 13 weeks, you stay there on site. It is free, so it covers your room and board and tuition. There's no expense. And that 13 weeks, you're there with all of the other police recruits from other police services across Ontario. And that training is extensive. A lot of it is book training, so classroom training where you're learning criminal code and highway traffic act and provincial statutes. And then, of course, there's driving, there's use of force training, and all kinds of scenario training during that 13 weeks. You do have to pass that with a minimum of 75% in every course in order to graduate. That is a provincial requirement. So assuming that you are successful in passing, then you'll go on to complete another 8 weeks then at the OPP Academy in Aurelia. This time you're with all of the OPP recruits again for that 8 weeks of OPP specific training in terms of policy, procedure, some of our equipment and database entry, and some more scenario work for that 8 weeks. And then upon successful completion of that, that will be when you report to your detachment and start your probationary constable training.
Okay. Somebody's asking when they do the prep and pin after they apply. So the prep is part of the, I touched on that. It's fitness requirements at the Ontario Police College. So you will do it there. Once you get to the Ontario Police College, you have to pass it there. The pin test, the pin or elements thereof will be done with the OPP at our academy and at OPC as well. So you have to make sure that you're prepared prior to the hiring process, through the hiring process, and then you'll be good for training from there. Somebody's also asking that they applied for the December intake. They said there's no update on their application. Can they still be accounted for the December class? So a couple of things on that. So people ask me, when's the best time to apply? And I always tell people, apply when you're ready at your most competitiveness. In other words, don't apply too fast. After you've listened to one of these sessions, looked at or attended an information session, self-assess yourself in the areas of assessment, and then see if there's any areas that you need to work on to make yourself more competitive. At any point through the process, if you're not successful, you cannot apply for another year. So in other words, sometimes it's better to take a few months and tweak some things and then apply rather than getting too early and potentially getting taken out of the process. As for the December class, probably not. If you haven't been interviewed at this point, you're unlikely to be chosen for the December class if you're successful through the process, being that we've changed from 3 intakes to 4, and what normally historically has been a late December start is now early December start for the next class. So things are shifting a little bit from our 3 intakes that we've always spoken about to 4 intakes. So if you haven't been interviewed now, and we're ending the end of October now, offers usually go out a few weeks before the class, so they're probably going to go out in the next few weeks. So no, you probably wouldn't be able to run through the process at this stage for December, early December intake.
So there was a question for me addressing women in policing, and what's that like as a career, and any advice in terms of trying to get into this career. And I would say this career offers opportunities for everyone. We are not looking for some kind of cookie cutter model of police officer. We really want our police officers to reflect the diversity of our communities. We serve the entire province, all sorts of different communities. And so we want our members to be representative of that diversity too. So part of that, yes, is women in policing, and there's still a lot of room for growth in that area within our organization. The first female police officer wasn't really, when you think about it, hired all that long ago. I believe it was either 74 or 75, I think. So I hate to say, but within my lifetime, basically. I don't want to age myself, but I digress. So I think it's got a lot of opportunity. And in terms of challenges, I don't think that any of the challenges that I've ever faced are unique only to female officers. Everyone across the board has certain challenges. So if you know that for you the fitness is a challenge, great. That's something that you can overcome through training. If you feel that there are some academics that you need to step up, or volunteerism, all of those areas of assessment, all of us have the same opportunities to improve and excel in those areas. And then I think once you're within the organization, all of those opportunities are available to everyone. And there's so many opportunities in terms of growth within, if you want to develop leadership and move through the ranks and become a supervisor, or whether you want to specialize, or whether you just want to become a solid frontline officer who is a mentor to everyone. Those opportunities are available to everyone. So I kind of have gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but I guess the answer is, you're your own limitation. There really, aren't any caps placed on anyone.
Okay. I'm just looking ahead. There's like a lot of questions today. I'm going to go through a few of them really quick, just so we can get through as many as we can, and maybe not quite in the same depth that we do sometimes, but I'll go through a few here. Differences between the OPP and a regional police service. The biggest thing is jurisdiction. Okay, the OPP covers areas across the province outside of those larger municipalities that have their own police service. Answering calls, stopping cars, conducting investigations are all fairly the same. The uniform is different. The place that you do it is different. Some of the administrative side of things will be different, but the actual police officers' work and investigations are kind of the same. With the OPP being such a large organization, sometimes those opportunities may come a little bit quicker throughout your career because we have so many positions around. What type of things should I have on my application make myself more competitive, better chance of getting hired? Keep looking at our self-assessment, okay? Any experience you can get, transferable skills, languages, different police experiences, that will make you more competitive from there. So anything that you can bring to the organization from your past employment, school, volunteer work, all that helps from there. And I'll touch on one more here. Somebody's asking, I'm just going to touch in the right way without going into the question. When you're called and said, congratulations, we have an offer for you, and you're given an offer of employment, at that time, they're giving you your detachment. So it's not at the end of the training, so that if they call you and offer you a position, that detachment is offered to you. And if you accept that, that's yours. It will still be available after your training. It's being held for you, that if you're successful through training, you're going to come to that detachment. So we tell you before the training and not after. So there's no risk of it being filled while you're in training. It is there, that opening is there, and that's why it's offered to you.
So just to touch on a few, a good question here, what we would suggest as the best avenue to get some firsthand experience about what the job is like. And that's a great thing to be thinking about, because this is a big career step, and so you want to know that you're getting into it with realistic expectations and that you understand. So I appreciate that question. So there are a few ways. Certainly, I would say in terms of the OPP, you should be looking at everything on our website, particularly under the careers section. There's a great frequently asked questions document, but then also on our social media. So certainly doing Ask Me Anything sessions like this a great way to learn a bit more, our information sessions. But then through social media, we have some virtual ride alongs. So some of those videos that give you exposure to kind of a day in the life, and you get to see some of our detachment locations. I would recommend that. I know it would be great if everyone had the opportunity to do a ride along, but that's just not a reality that everyone has access to. But you know, there are ways outside of that you can learn a bit more as well through volunteering. You know, if you want to become an auxiliary or apply to our cadet program, depending on where you are in your career, that could be a first start where you learn a little bit more and get some exposure. So there are some ways like that you could get some exposure to policing. There was one other question here in terms of driving, and if you don't have a great driving record, what might you do about that? So one of our minimum requirements is that you have to have a Class G driver's license with no more than 6 demerit points. But really, we are looking at a history of long-term responsible driving. So I would say if you have a lot of charges and convictions and maybe at-fault collisions recently, you might want to put a bit of time and distance between yourself and that driving behavior before you think of applying, just to show us a period of responsible driving. But certainly to this question, could some driving courses be helpful? Certainly. That shows your motivation and your willingness to learn. But we really are looking at that ability to show responsible driving habits, because so much of our time is spent in a cruiser. And we really want to make sure that you get from A to B safely and that you demonstrate the kind of driving behavior that we expect of the general public.
No, duration postings are not mandatory. Those days of shipping people up north are over. So you won't have to go there. Somebody's asking about any language testing. There's no language testing throughout. Well, I shouldn't say that. Part of the testing, there is certain like aptitude testing where there's language component in that. However, it's English language only. So you have to have a certain competency in the English language to be able to successful through the process. The organization, your reports, everything will be in English. So you have to be able to properly express yourself, write in a manner that that just flows and you get your thoughts across, and good language skills. If you're not sure on that, you can always develop taking some English courses if you come from a second background or second language background, or if English is your second language, I should say. Average processing time, 3 to 6 months approximately. It all depending on when you apply to when the next class is, but approximately 3 to 6 months is what we shoot for.
I don't think you touched on this one already. If someone has been is fairly new to Canada and has only been here for a couple of years, how does that affect their chances and regarding the background too? So certainly, as we mentioned, you either have to have your you have to be a Canadian citizen or have your permanent residency to apply. So that's the first thing. And if you have and you're new to Canada, then certainly we encourage you to apply, because depending, really, regardless of where you grew up, you probably bring some great experience and knowledge from that. And certainly because of the diversity of our communities, you probably have something great to offer. Like I say, we're not looking for a cookie cutter model of a police officer. So whatever you bring is probably a great asset. And then in terms of the background, we deal with that, where we do have many applicants who come from other countries, and we do the background just fine, regardless of location.
Okay. I'll do a couple questions if you want to do a couple, and I think that's we're not going to be able to get everybody's questions today.
Sure.
Somebody's asking if there's kind of a rapid advancement stream for people that have multiple degrees or work experience. There is not. You run through the whole hiring process like everybody else. Like I said, it's 3 to 6 months, depending when the classes are. There is no special process for that. You apply for the constable position and you go through the process like everybody else. Somebody volunteered abroad, can that be included as your experience in your application? Absolutely. Okay. If you whatever it was in every other country, and there's a lot of different things. I've seen a lot of different things come through different applicants. Then yes, that can be for sure be used in your application.
Someone here working in a grocery store for a number of years and wondering if they need kind of security guard experience, and no. So when it comes to employment history, you don't have to have that experience as a security guard or something that might seem obviously related to policing. Again, we're looking for diversity of experience. So working in a grocery store, you probably have some great customer service skills, communication skills. We're really looking at a person's entire employment history and what kind of work ethic you have. There's a lot that we're looking at, but it doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to policing. And then there's one here I noticed, Constable Levac, I thought you might like. They're asking if there's a motorcycle police, and we do have the golden helmets. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so I rode OPP motorcycles, not on the golden helmets. So certain detachments have motorcycles, and I did that for almost 20 years. They say that in the Marine Corps are two of the most fun courses the OPP has to offer. I can't speak of the Marine Corps, but apparently it is quite fun. But I hardly knew how to ride a motorcycle. I mean, I could get from point A to point B, but other than that, it was pretty limited. And they start you off from right scratch to doing a whole bunch of cool drills with everybody else. And it's a great opportunity. So yeah, we have a good program. Depending what detachment you go to, not every detachment has motorcycles. But I did that at the Ottawa detachment for almost 20 years, and it was lots of fun. But on that note, it's getting that time. I apologize. There are a lot of questions today, but we can't get to all the questions. I do want to remind everybody that we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, opp.ca/careers to get a whole bunch of information on our website there. Please follow us on social media. And again, on YouTube, our Northern Tour, Wawa tonight. Have a look at that. And I hope to see everybody at some point through this process. I wish everybody luck, and please keep following, attend other sessions. Maybe your question will get answered if we get through it today.
Thanks a lot, everyone.